Life groups, welcome to the year. So good to have you together, that you've gathered probably for the first time. Thank you. We met with all of the life group leaders this past week, and it was just so encouraging to see all of the fantastic people bringing leadership to this really vital ministry in our church. So bless you as you gather tonight. What I want to do is I just want to fly over this sermon series and this past weekend's message. This is our first one of the year called Awaken, Passion and Practice. Our heart as a church is to make disciples. In Matthew 28, clearly Jesus says, go and make disciples. This is a commission that Jesus has us, me, our church on. And so that is our heart. And a disciple is simply somebody who apprentices Jesus, who takes the teaching and the methods and the model, the example of Jesus and lives that out in their everyday. So this title, Awaken, Passion and Practice. Awaken reflects our church's desire for renewal, that God would visit and manifest himself in our church in really special and fresh ways. This idea of passion reflects this idea of our love for God should increase. We want to love him and treasure him more than anything else. But practice, the passion is the love. The practice is the daily habits, the daily routines, the daily liturgies that we have that will facilitate God's presence with us as we go. So the whole thing is about discipleship and renewal. So to that end, we have just outlined what are the habits, what are the practices, what are the attitudes or actions of disciple. We just believe that every disciple has to love, gather, practice, and go. Love, gather, practice, go. This is what every disciple should be doing. And so our church has adopted that and really shaped our ministry around those four things moving forward. So this past weekend, we looked at love. And to do that, we looked at Mark chapter 12, Jesus' famous teaching in Mark chapter 12, where he says this, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, with all of your mind, and with all your strength." In verse 31, he says, the second is this, love your neighbor as yourself. There is no commandment greater than these. So we just looked at the three movements of love, downward, upward, outward. Downward, upward, outward. First, this idea of downward love, God's love, lavish love towards us. So we talked about identity. When you think about love, it's all about identity. What is the truest thing about you? Well, there's a lot of true things about me. It's true that I'm a husband. It's true that I'm a father. It's true that I'm a pastor. But are they the truest things? As a Christian, our worldview is informed by the love of God, and God loves everybody. So what's the truest thing about every single person, especially disciples, is that they are loved by God, this downward love, and it is the safest and most secure place that we can put our identity. Charles Taylor, philosopher, defines identity by this. He says, identity is defined by the commitments and identifications which provide the frame or horizon within which I can try to determine from case to case what is good or valuable or ought to be done, or what I endorse or oppose. In other words, it's a framework of which we tell ourselves what is good, true, right, and beautiful. It's the operating system of how we determine the world, myself and myself in the world. So everybody, every single person has an identity. We just think that being identified by being loved by God is the truest and safest thing and place to put your identity. So we talked about what is that actually in a granular sense, what does that look like? In Deuteronomy chapter 32, God is talking to the nation of Israel, and he says that they are the apple of his eye, and he cares for them. There's a tenderness. And so it's actually a Hebrew idiom. And literally what it means is that when you go face to face with somebody and you get so close to their eye that you can see your reflection in their eye, that's the type of love that God has for us, his people. It's tender, it's close, it's intimate. And so the clearest expression of God's tender, pursuing love is in the cross. And this helps us understand how big God's love is, that God's love cost something. It's not ethereal, it's granular. When we look to the cross, how much does it cost God to love us? Everything. His son. So this is why the gospel is so important for us to understand and be situated in when we think about God's love for us. This is his downward love, clearly expressed in the cross. Because of that, our reaction to the downward love is upward love, that we love God. See, what Christianity says is that we are desiring people, which is a good thing. We all have them. Christianity doesn't say to repress your desires. It simply says to curate them or direct them into the right places or the right ends. And what sin does to our loves is it disorders them, that we don't love God the way that we should. As Mark says, as he records for us, that we should love God with our heart, our soul, our mind, and our strength. It's this total love that we have that in comparison to the love that we have for God, Jesus says, everything else should look like hate. And this is rightly ordered love. See, sin disorders our love, and we place our love on lesser things. So because of this total, immense love, we just believe that God's love satisfies. It makes its way into your soul, satisfies and changes you to love God as you should. So Christianity says sex, wine, food, success, hard work, recreation, vacation, all good things that we should like, but we shouldn't love them more than we do God. And this changes the way that we view sin. Sin is this idea simply that we don't love God as we should, and other things are in his place. So God's love changes us. See, I think knowing that intellectually is super important. But more than that, it has to make its way down into our heart. We have to have God's love, his downward love, as so close to our identity so that we love him in return. So some of us might think that we know of God's love, and intellectually we know that God is love, but that reality has never permeated our hearts. I think the difference, and it's a big difference, an intellectual acknowledgement that God is love, or is it at the core of who you are that you know that you are loved? The difference there is a difference between my oldest daughter, Hannah. She knows the ABCs. She can sing the alphabet. She can even point out the different letters, but she doesn't know how to read. And that's the difference. Some of us know the ABCs. We know of God's love, but we don't know how to read. And the idea that we can experience the love of God is you start to read the beautiful story of Christianity, and it makes all the difference. So downward love leads to upward love, which leads to outward love in verse 31, where Jesus says, love your neighbor as yourself. This is why life groups are so important, because your opportunity to sit, listen, care, and love one another tonight. We know that people would rather feel loved than wowed. And I hope that is your life group's experience, that every single person gathered there tonight will leave knowing that people have taken the time to know their name, know their life, and love them, pray for them, and do life together there. Life groups are so important because of that. In a church like ours, we have to continue to press the importance of groups that sit together, listen, and love one another. So because of God's love for us, we love selflessly, we love with self-forgetfulness, and we love everybody. So take the time tonight to talk about this. But what does it mean to love God with all of your heart, soul, mind, and strength? A total love. What does it mean then to love your neighbor as yourself? This is the elementary things of Christianity, but the things that we never graduate from. This is the action or habit of discipleship, to love God and love each other. Thanks again for gathering tonight. Bless you now as you discuss.